Welcome to Mercedes and the Chap, a show dedicated to helping humans become extraordinary. Here we'll hone a well-rounded roadmap for us to step into our potential in all things relationships, work, purpose, and legacy. Chap, porn.
Porn. Yeah, another mind-blowing episode. But you know, it's interesting, and I will say this. I will say a lot of things, so I don't know why I said that. But if there is a line of women lining up in Manhattan because they found out where Dom is giving his male, coaching or like men's group lectures, Mercedes will be fighting to get to the front of the line to find a guy who is so receptive and so understandably in need themselves of finding help in whatever world of the taboo.
I think single women everywhere are always, I would get asked this question by any of my single friends. How am I ever going to find a guy who does their work, who, is willing to level up, who's willing to actually think about things, critically think about the things going on inside himself instead of just watch some sports, drink some beers, escape, whatever it is their way of escaping. And I'm pretty sure I have cracked the code. It's basically hang outside of wherever Dom's holding his workshops this week. Or just ask Dom, who is the guy we had on the show today, the magician we had on the show today, Dominick Quartuccio. And we talked all about really how to understand your relationship to pornography, because I think it's definitely, there is an epidemic around that particular form of media these days. And he dissected it for us and gave us so many ways in and out of that. Whether if you're doing that unhealthily, and then also gave us insights on how to just be a better man. I feel like, Chap, what was your favorite piece of this episode? Just I want to know coming from a guy's perspective, actually.
I would say his own understanding and admission of his own problems in the past, and him not only just spouting this knowledge, but he lived it, and if he can do it based on what he's telling us and what he's experienced, this really should be somewhat of a good journey for you as well. Definitely a good journey for you as well. And he had everything.
Yeah,
he had everything.
And coming from Dom's background as a former sex addict and now turned integrated men's coach, it's like kind of incredible that the shadowiest sides of us can really turn into or alchemize into these amazing gifts for the world if we're willing to dive deep, do the work, and transform.
That's
and
right.
I think this guy's a living example.
And it's a hero's journey, and Dom is the hero by far. And
just another one of your Greek gods.
He's gonna hang out with me in the constellations. Don't you worry.
All right, well, let's get into it. I can't wait to deliver this one to our audience. What's up, Dom? I see you got a cute little friend hanging out with you. I can't take it.
This is Snoop. He's a baby mini Dalmatian, 13 weeks old, and not my dog. This is the house dog, but Bobby owns him. He's in the production crew over here, and thought we'd make this dog a star by putting him on the show.
We can't get enough of little Snoop. Look at him. He's such a ham. I can't. Okay, well, besides me getting extremely distracted right off the bat, I want to jump into today discussing some of the common sexual issues that men bring up to me most often. And that would include anxiety around penis size, anxieties around hardness, erectile dysfunction. They might be unable to reach orgasm during sex with a woman, and other sexual dysfunctions that are out there. All of these things are symptoms of porn addiction, really, to some degree or another. And I know that is a subject that you can definitely broach with us. So let's just start with this idea of what is healthy. How do you understand when your use of pornography is healthy or not?
Sure. And maybe to provide some context here, in the last episode that we did together, I mentioned that I spent 4 years in Sex Addicts Anonymous, right? Back from 2013 to 2017. I no longer identify as a sex addict, I had a chance to spend a lot of time around people who had a lot of compulsive issues around pornography. And I would say about 50% of the men who came to seek help in the Sex Addicts Anonymous rooms were there for porn addiction, not because they were paying for sex or going to massage parlors or because they couldn't stop cheating on their partner. It was really because they had this compulsive issue with pornography. And for any of your listeners, wherever you are on the spectrum of, yeah, I've got it under control, or maybe I've got something out of control, there's going to be something in you for this conversation, right? I talk to a lot of guys who don't have the same level of compulsive behaviors or issues that maybe I had for a part of my life. But because I went to those extreme places, I have a level of intention and introspection around what caused me to go there. And so, you know, what you just brought up, Mercedes, about there's a lot of guys who are coming with performance anxiety issues or body image issues, which, you know, for most of my upbringing, were relegated to the female gender, right? But now a lot of guys are talking more about body image issues, whether it's penis size, body shape. And a lot of that is factored on what they're seeing in the pornographic realm. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when I was growing up and I was a kid, like, I didn't have high-speed internet pornography because I'm 43 years old. I had Playboy magazines. But the guys growing up today, you know, have access to intense, hardcore porn way younger than they should. And I ran a poll about this. About 85% of my audience discovered pornography between the ages of 8 and 11.
Wow. God,
Right?
that's amazing.
Isn't that, I mean, think how young that is.
Crazy. Yeah, crazy. I would have thought like between like 13 and 16 or something, but that's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the age that most guys discover masturbation is about between 11 to 14. That just based on my own non-super scientific, but, you know, polling my audiences.
Yeah.
Right.
But pornography seems to happen even younger, especially with access to, everyone has a phone or access to a phone, you know, computers, tablets, video gaming systems, right? So this is something I didn't realize, but so Lisa Ann, who, if anyone who watches porn, most of the guys will know Lisa Ann. She's a porn star that had been in the business for 20, 25 years. She retired a few years ago. She's a friend of mine. And she said to me that she's got kids who reach out to her through an ad that they saw while playing PlayStation or Xbox that like took them one or two, you know, clicks down the road, and eventually they found themselves on a hardcore porn site. And then they found her and they started reaching out to her, and she's just like, this is insanity that kids this young.
It's almost, I don't want to say criminal because I'm that, but it's almost like
How it's
hydrocodone trafficking. Yeah.
That's a great, like Oxy, you know,
Yeah,
kind of like,
yeah.
let me bring you in here. And then now you're on heroin. Now you're on ODing on fentanyl, right? One thing I do want to do as we start this conversation around porn is I want to set a context for, this is not a porn shaming conversation. Because a lot of the stuff we hear about porn is like, it's evil, it's the devil, it's going to kill you. And there's plenty of that conversation out there. I don't think that's very helpful for the whole host of men who are watching porn, who are going to continue to watch porn. And when they hear that, all it does is it gives them a sense of guilt, or there's something wrong with them. And what I'd much rather do as we have this conversation is to say, porn can have a role, a healthy role in your sex life if you know why it's there and if you use it with intention. The problem though, 99.9% of guys do not use it with intention because they stumbled across it. We're not allowed to talk about this stuff, and it can lead to some really bad behavior. So we can get into all of that today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you bring that across. Just the fact that it has so much to do with intention of use when it comes to pornography, but just generally anything that you can use as an escapism in life, which could look like shopping. That might be mine. Any kind of drug, alcohol, foods, exactly. So I love that you bring that across. That anything in moderation, it can be something actually maybe positive. It can be healthy, but when we go into a place where we're just as trying to escape and avoid feeling our feelings and dealing with things in life, now we are creating a serious problem for ourselves.
Right on. And I think the question that we all want to maybe leave with, or to present to your audience is, okay, if I'm watching porn, how much is too much?
Right, yeah.
You know, like, how do I know when this is getting in the way of either my sex life, or is this having an adverse effect on me? And so one of the things that I ask men to bring awareness to is, have your porn habits escalated, right? Let's take a look at how you've used porn over the last 3 years or so, maybe even just 1 year. Are you watching porn more often than you were a year ago? Are you watching more and more intense porn than a year ago? Because what was getting you off back then is just it's not as interesting. It takes something more, intense. Are you finding yourself less and less interested in having sex with a real human being? Are you finding that when you're in a sexual situation with another human being, are you pornifying that person?
Right.
Like putting them into those scenarios, because regular sex with a regular person in a regular human body is not as it's not as electrifying as what you experience when you're in that porn space. And so you need to actually start to call up a movie or a video that you've watched before in order to keep you hard or to get you off. These are all very more common than you would think, things that are going on in a lot of guys' minds as they're either watching porn or with someone sexually. And the person on the receiving end of that can feel that.
Okay, so is there, maybe ask for a differentiation here, or maybe there isn't one, but if you have a solid partner that you've been with for a little period of time, this is different from you're going to play this and we're just going to have some fun. You're talking about in your brain, actually imagining maybe this or maybe that, and you're not connected with her and you're not present with her or whomever it is, but you're more into this fantasy world. Is that different from what the first thing I was?
Yeah, the two scenarios that you painted are night and day different, right? The first one, your partner is involved in that situation. It's on the surface. It's transparent. It's like, hey, honey, what do you think we mix it up a little bit tonight and let's watch something together? You have her consent. You're both watching it. You're dialed into each other's energies. The other scenario where she has no idea, or whoever you're, whoever you're with, let's just say in this case, it's a she. She has no clue that in your mind, you're pulling up that porn clip you saw from the day before. You're thrusting her into all these situations, or you're doing something that you learned by watching porn that could be maybe really aggressive or something that she hasn't asked for, you haven't gotten her consent on, like smacking her or choking her. Women tell me this all the time. It's like, I get pushed into a sexual situation with a guy. He almost turns into the Hulk. Right? He's like this nice, present, compassionate guy. And then all of a sudden, as soon as we get into a sexual situation, he's a different human being. And now he's smacking me, pulling my hair, and the dirty talk comes out. And I don't know who I feel like I'm just being I'm a vessel for his masturbation.
Yeah.
And that, that is a totally different scenario than inviting someone in and having the consent and you're on the same page.
So that's something that maybe should be a little more of an alert to you, that if you feel like that's happening more and more, I'm sure every once in a while that's fine, but if it's happening more and more, you should maybe be on a little higher level of alert.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is where you start to look at is this what I'm watching, and are my habits around this? Are these helping me, or are they creating a barrier to connection with another person?
Yeah, and you have a really cool protocol, the 5 Ds for figuring out if your relationship to porn might be unhealthy.
Yeah, I'll hit the first 3 pretty quickly because I think they're super important. So when you go, the first 3 Ds are discovery, downloading, and drifting, right? These are 3 stages that pretty much all men go on with a relationship to porn. Discovery. How did you discover porn? And this has a huge impact on its impact in your life, right? For example, I keep bringing this up. When I discovered porn, I was 8 years old. I didn't tell the story about this yet. I was in my parents' basement rummaging around, the boxes that are underneath the stairs, because that's where all the buried treasure is, dust and everything. And I open up one of the boxes, and buried deep in there is a Playboy magazine. It was the first time I'd ever seen boobs in my life, right? And like an 8-year-old boy, I felt electricity in my body. It was incredible. And then I felt like, oh man, I'm doing something wrong. Took the Playboy magazine, shoved it right back where I found it, and trying to do a cleanup job so no one found me. Mm-hmm. That was a very gentle way of being introduced to the female form. Naked body, there's no one else in the...
It's a pretty common story, I'm guessing, from that era.
From that era, yeah. Now take a 8-year-old kid today who gets his hands on someone's iPhone or, an iPad, and he somehow gets to Pornhub. And, when you're on Pornhub, that front page itself, it's it is fire hosing you with all sorts of, gangbangs.
So there's no age barrier there. I mean, it's like just boom, 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 and you're on it.
And it
or
hits.
or any of these, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what protocols a parent has set up, or a brother, son, or a brother.
And those don't really work that well.
You can easily circumvent them, right? And so you talk to guys, and like they're like, yeah, my sons found it when they were, like this age, and this is what they came across. And the definition of trauma is too much, too fast, too soon. And so many boys are coming to and into porn way too much, way too fast, way too soon. And so that's the discovery stage. He's going to town.
We got Snoop just chowing on a toy if you hear the pop.
Right, he's going to town on this toy.
He's too cute. We got to leave him in.
Man.
Yeah, he's probably, no one's listening to a thing that I'm saying. Everyone's watching this dog.
Sorry.
But
that's an interesting description of trauma that I actually haven't heard articulated that way.
Yeah, too much, too fast, too soon. And that's like a lot of guys' first experience with porn. So that's the discovery stage, is like, what was your entry point? Mine was pretty gentle, but what's happening now is it's pretty extreme. The downloading stage, this is really important. What are the messages that you're downloading, and what's the worldview that is being shaped as you watch the porn?
So what would, an example? Okay.
Yeah, an example would be, as you're watching pornography, like, you look at the men in the men's bodies. Every dick is 8 inches or bigger, right? In a porno video, many times way bigger. I have this book that one of my mentors bought me. She bought me this book called the Penis Book, and I think it's from a urologist. And the statistics show that I think 3 or 4% of men have over an 8-inch size penis.
Well, and there's a reason they're in the porn, because they have an abnormally large whatever. So don't think that's normal just by proxy, right? Or just by definition.
Right. It's easy to say that, but if you're like, an 11-year-old kid.
How are you going to know?
Right. How you know? Like, you're just watching this. It's almost like you're watching the NBA and being like, that's how tall I'm supposed to be.
Oh, yeah. That's horrible.
And so
even just to sorry to put a highlight on you, chat, for a second,
thanks.
but just the fact that right now you said an abnormally large whatever, like the taboo around saying the word penis in our culture is terrifying in
guilty.
itself.
Right.
Exactly. And you're not alone. That's most of the world. So it's just crazy. You're not even going to research it. We don't have a reality around this stuff. We have whatever we're finding between the cracks of what we're allowed to see, growing up.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. So this is so far great. Please.
Yeah. So first of all, a boy who's watching this, it's usually a boy who's, first encountering this. This is what a body's supposed to look like. Then now I'm witnessing the behavior that the men in these videos are demonstrating. They're all hyper aggressive. They're not asking, there's no semblance of consent whatsoever. There's very little attention paid towards a woman's pleasure. She's just automatically pleasured whenever her body is touched. These outsized screams and moans. He can't do anything wrong. He's also lasting for 50, 60 minutes, and so you are downloading what a woman's supposed to look like, how she's supposed to behave, how I'm supposed to be, how aggressive I'm supposed to be, what my body's supposed to look like. And you're 8, 11, 12, and you're not talking to anybody about this in a thoughtful way. So you log hundreds of hours, maybe thousands of hours of consuming this stuff before you encounter another human being who wants to go there sexually with you. Man. And we wonder why this shit goes so bad.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's, and as far as that goes, you're actually seeing, they're making film roughly about this for a reason. It's the you tune the amp to an 11, and it's so far from realism, and you're 8 to 11 years old, and this is what, and now we're telling you shame on you, and that's all you've known now for 3 or 4 years in your most developmental stages. Right.
And so, what do we expect? Do we expect us to have healthy relationships with sexuality or intimate connections with another person? And quite often it's the young girls who are on the business end of this level of ignorance and guilt and shame, and like what guys are trying to emulate from these videos. So those are the first 2 stages, which is how did you discover porn and what was that impact on you? And I think more and more boys are getting in there from the traumatic, too much, too fast, too soon standpoint. Then the downloading stage. What are you, from a worldview, like what are you, how's that shaping how you think sexual interactions are supposed to be? And then this third stage is drifting. And drifting is characterized by just this unconscious state of being on autopilot. I don't even think about why I watch porn or when I watch porn or how much porn I watch. I just kind of, pick it up and I scroll to it and I jerk off a couple times a day and then I do it. And then all of a sudden I get into something and I just watch that and I escalate my behaviors and I'm watching things that maybe don't make me feel good, but I'm turned on and I feel ashamed after I jerked off to it and I'm going to let that go. And then, it's like that indiscriminate action is
like autopilot. Like
yeah.
You're saying. Yeah.
And the key, and I would say one of the key characteristics of drifting is beyond the unconsciousness of it. One of the key characteristics is escalation, like I talked about before. If, a year ago, you're watching like 2 times as much, or you're going down this path of watching things that really make you feel kind of sick and disgusted on the inside, but you're still doing it, or maybe you're ashamed of it, but can't seem to stop. That is a real sign that like your behavior has gotten to a place where maybe enough's enough and you need to create what I call a disrupting moment. That's the 4th D, like disrupt, which is take a look at how often you're watching and maybe take some time away, have a conversation about it, read something, listen to a podcast or listen to something like this to recalibrate. Is this healthy? What role is it playing in my life?
It's interesting because it's interesting for multiple reasons. But I remember this girl I knew, and she and I really like spicy food. And she got so into the spicy food that she stopped tasting regular food. So I think it was the nutritionist was like, we have to stop all spicy food, salt, anything for like a month. Yeah. And when she came back, and I think it was a month, when she came back into it, she was like, this is amazing. It was like the most bland food at a cafeteria. It blew her mind.
This is a great analogy. Okay. So you brought up a story that I remember from my own experience. When I went into Sex Addicts Anonymous, one of the things that they take away from you, you abstain from sexual behavior for a period of time, just kind of like alcoholics, abstain forever from alcohol. What we also took away was no porn, no masturbation. So for 4 years, I didn't watch any porn. I didn't masturbate at all. And I was in a relationship, rekindling the integrity and restoring faith in that relationship. And what was fascinating, when I took away the porn, this was amazing, that all of these senses that I'd had that had been dulled away started coming back. And when I was making love to my girlfriend at the time, I could, like, the smell of her hair would like light me up. I could feel her fingertips on my body and it would be like electrifying. That stuff in the past would have been like so dead and
Same
numb.
person, right?
Same exact person.
Wow.
The way that she moved, the way that she moaned, a kiss would like, it would electrify everything in my body. Whereas I would have to get into some like pretty, erotic or extreme situations because porn had beaten that into me. And then now, like, her body was the most beautiful thing on the planet. Her movements, her lips, I could appreciate everything. And it was 1,000,000 times better and deeper and more nourishing than anything I experienced when I was watching porn.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I know that during your healing, you also, or during your journey, because it's all a journey and it's never ending, right? You also did a bout of abstinence, right?
Yeah, the 4 years. Like sexual abstinence.
Sexual abstinence, yes.
11 months. So I was not having sex with anybody, and no porn, and no masturbation for 11 months.
Wow, that's some monk shit.
Yeah.
How did that affect you? What happened in there? Did anything specific come up from? I mean, that's a pretty intense option you went with there.
So my life changed in such a dramatic way over those 11 months that I think most people who hear this will probably be skeptical. So sexual energy is our creative energy, right? If we think about this, what does sex create? It creates life, like real human being life. Sex is also creative in terms of ideas, music, business concepts. And over those 11 months when I wasn't jerking off, when I used to jerk off like 2 or 3 times a day, every day for decades, wasn't watching porn, wasn't having sex with anybody, all that energy was still in here in my body. Sometimes I felt like a shook up bottle of Coca-Cola. It was like almost too intense. But what ended up started happening was I started having these dreams of leaving a 15-year corporate career in financial services where I was making really good money and, had a very conservative path, but it was like, it was doing really well for me. I could have done really well for myself for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. But I was like, I want to start my own business as a speaker and as a coach. I want to run men's groups. And that idea had come up before, but then I would get anxious, I would jerk off, and then I'd just be like, just kind of sedate myself. Like some people, like maybe overeat or do drugs or drink. I would do whatever to sedate myself. I had no sedatives anymore.
Right.
So that energy was just like, I gotta build something. And it was during those 11 months where I had the epiphany that I am going to leave. Like I made the definitive decision that I said in February of 2016, I am going to leave Prudential, which is the company I worked for, and I'm going to start my own path. I don't believe, Mercedes, I would have ever had the courage or the energy or the juice to do that if I didn't have those 11 months of that energy building.
Yeah, that strength is incredible. When you tell the story, I get chills because it's so important, I think, for us as humans to understand that sexual energy is creative energy. It's what we use to create, to procreate, right? And when you can harness it, you get to do amazing things with it. If you aren't someone who is trying to make a child with it at this moment, you can direct it somewhere else. And in this case, you created an entire business, an entire direction that your life would go.
Yep.
Just by sitting with that energy and allowing it to build up and watching it grow and channeling it in the direction you wanted to go with it.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of guys don't really understand that energy is the potent life force energy that you can go into life and fuck life with.
Right. Penetrate life with this energy.
Am I allowed to say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I thought I was going to say we were in pretty intense. Yeah. Okay. But yeah, like you can penetrate life with, and so many guys, metaphorically speaking, like just kind of have a limp dick energy in this world because it's going into a sock or Kleenex or, and I was that guy for so many years. So this just brings it back to, hopefully the reason why I'm talking about this right now is I'm hopefully giving some other guys kind of like a wake up call around like, what am I short circuiting or short changing by just doing this indiscriminately? And we gave a lot of examples of like how it creates disconnection from your partner, how it can create, image issues or self-confidence issues. But this other part of your vitality and life force runs through your sexuality in many cases. And if it's just being dumped indiscriminately everywhere, then you're kind of showing up in life a fraction of your full power.
Absolutely. Yes. And I can feel that like when I'm with a partner who is doing the practice of edging, who's doing the practice of trying to bring his breath, to allow him to bring himself back down when he's all the way worked up. I, as the person receiving, from him, feel the magnitude of his energy in that state. The amount of power that he has in his cock in that moment is insane. It is not, it's hard to describe in human words because it feels like a godlike energy that we're talking about.
I mean, listen to Mercedes, right? I mean, that's, and one of the things we were talking about leading up to this like recording was we were going to maybe do an episode called How to Seduce Mercedes.
Oh yeah.
And because I imagine that, like the majority, if not all of your listeners and viewers have had a fantasy of you at the center of it. And you just told your audience what it is that you crave and desire, right? Which is a man who's cultivated and curated that self-command around his sexual energy. And, in the work that I do, I don't just focus on sexuality. It's actually a very small part of my work, but there are these three big energies that sabotage most guys. It's fear, anger, those two big ones that when it rips through a guy's body, he either collapses, explodes. But the sexual energy is this other one, and it's so potent. And we know this because a lot of guys, either we can't control ourselves or, we finish too soon and then we're ashamed or embarrassed. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. This takes training. It takes work to circulate the energy like Mercedes you were talking about. Yeah. That takes time. And if guys were watching videos on how to circulate your energy and how to breathe and how to edge, as much as they were watching porn, they would have no more problems in the bedroom.
There may not be world war anymore. I mean, it's that powerful. Right. And that type of discipline is something that, again, like it comes back to that conversation around accountability, which is what we talked to you on the last show about. There's so much that you have to find in yourself to override all those old stories from your teenage years and from however many years until probably the point you're watching the show, the show right now. That you have to be able to override all of those old patterns and decide that this is going to be your new path. And in your work with men, is there like a tipping point that you see that allows them to go, you know what, I think it's time for me to start having sex like a man instead of a teenager.
Instead of a teenager, that's a good one. Good point. I find in my work that men change in one of two circumstances. The first circumstance is the group of guys who they want an edge, like they're always like constantly looking for that next level of performance, like give me that thing. And then the other group is once I've gotten run over by the Mack truck, right? And something is undeniably broken. I can't ignore it any longer. That's when I wake up and say, okay, now I got to look at this.
Yes.
With this porn thing, I think most guys come to the awakening of when something is they can't ignore it any longer. It's broken.
Yes. They're experiencing the ED, or they're experiencing someone, being in bed with someone, and they can't figure out why it doesn't work like it works when they're watching porn, right?
Exactly. And then there's the guilt, the shame that comes up around that, or they find themselves withdrawing from sexual situations altogether. And so now they're just like sitting alone in their room, jerking off, and they're not out in the world connecting, and they know there's something up with that. Or some guys will, some guys get to the place where it's like, man, I'm having sex with my partner, but I'm thinking about the porn star I watched earlier. That doesn't feel very good for me. It feels icky. It feels, or my partner has said, where did you go during that sexual experience? I couldn't even, your eyes are closed. You're somewhere else. I didn't even feel like you were here with me. And she's told me that enough times that now I need to kind of take a look at this. Those are I think the big ways that people come to this. And Chap, your point before about taking time off of the spicy food, sometimes taking time off of porn to just even look at for a week, or 2 weeks. I don't know how long.
Just try it is what you're saying.
Just try it, and then bring awareness to how many times you feel the impulse to, in this moment I would have gone to porn, or tonight I would have wanted to jerk off before I go to bed. Or, oh my God, it's really difficult to not look at porn right now. Or I only went 3 days and then I had to go back into it. Holy shit, this thing is actually more addictive than you maybe have given it credit for. Do you want to live your life like that?
Well, and let me ask you as a guy, and this is going to sound really lame, but hopefully it's true, is you have this energy like Mercedes described. It's just whatever, godlike energy. And I like that description. Makes me feel good about myself, but it's
well, she wasn't talking about you, man.
I'm talking about all men. All men have access to this.
She clearly knows where my place is in the constellations. She does go out. I occasionally look up, but here's the thing. But this is going to sound really lame, but isn't just a good going to the gym or a good run, does that, maybe a way to displace some of this a little bit, not go find a cigarette, but maybe go for a run. I know this sounds lame, but do you ever suggest that, look, let's try some things that could be just cathartic or something that, instead of, maybe go
to move this through your body.
Yeah, to move the energy through your body, because I'm going to tell you right now, when I run, I don't go run for a mile. It's I want to feel so exhausted when I'm done because I feel like I actually did something.
Yep.
Do you ever suggest that kind of thing?
Yes. So you're saying in the instance where someone's feels the urge to go to porn,
where you're trying to kind of wean them off of it a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, for sure. So when an urge comes up, this is one of the things that we've looked at is when an urge comes up, it's usually, for me, I did deep introspection around this. I either feel a moment of I'm bored. What? So here's a great question, and then we'll loop it back to you.
Please, yeah, absolutely.
It's what are the feelings and thoughts that precede you going to watch porn and jerking off, right?
What's the trigger?
What exactly? And it could be it's something as simple as, well, it's nighttime, and now it became a ritual. I do that before bed. But usually for me, there's some emotion. It's I'm bored, I'm stressed out, I'm understimulated, I've got a deadline on a project. There's something complex. Lonely is a huge one.
So you're kind of self-medicating in a way.
100%. And so are a lot of guys, right? Or maybe it's not so extreme. It could just be I'm bored.
Right.
And
it is a self-soothing practice. and again, it comes back to the way we started this conversation of like, when does it become unhealthy? Because there is, a benefit to having a way to soothe yourself, right?
Exactly. And it can start like when I described in the last episode, when I first learned how to jerk off, it was like, whoa, there's this amazing feeling. And it was kind of really cool. But over time, when I learned to use it to avoid all of my emotions, I used porn and masturbation the same way that alcoholics, numb their emotions, and drug addicts numb their emotions, and overeaters numb their emotions. That was just my, my dealer's choice. I picked that one. And so for me, it's like, okay, I notice when I'm tired or lazy or alone or whatever, these are the things that precede it. And then yes, to get back to your original question is, okay, instead of jumping on the computer or my phone, can I do something else with that energy, right? Can I go and work out or, meditate or do breath work or, whatever the thing, call a friend or do something, go for a walk, play a video game, like anything in that period of time to kind of either shift that so you can create some space between that stimulus and the response, which is typically like, let me just jump on porn.
This is such an interesting place that I have spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to navigate in the work that I do, because I have such a sex-forward job, and because I have a successful OnlyFans, and I feel very, I almost want to call it like protective of the men in my influential sphere. Yeah. And I want to be giving them a what do I want to call it? Like a system or structure.
That's part of the reason we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, that's what you're doing
absolutely.
right now. Yeah.
But with that work on OnlyFans, which is like known for pornography, known for being this platform that you can basically kind of buy whatever you want to watch, right? Yeah. So, and Dom, we've talked about this in the past a little bit, but just figuring out how to be like that Trojan horse on that platform specifically, but where people can enter, men specifically can enter into the world that I'm offering, that's a very sex-forward world, but then travel down the road of figuring out themselves, stepping towards their potential, and it becoming more of a really a spiritual experience. It's very tricky, right? Because they have to, first of all, be able to disrupt a lot of the patterning that they have in their life, and they might come there thinking, oh, I'm going to masturbate to this, that, and the other. And that type of content is offered if you're looking for it. However, there is this other deeper experience that can happen. And something I've been playing with lately is how do I continue to create content that's going to bridge that gap. Yeah. And this thing I would love to get both of your advice on as men, and especially men in this particular type of work, is this idea I have of creating a kind of step down ladder system of content that where I don't know what I would do. Maybe it's like a series of content that I number from most sexy to least sexy. And even though I don't do pornography, I still consider myself a sex worker because I'm consumerizing sexuality to a degree. And I believe that that's the definition of a sex worker. And so stepping down this ladder for men who decide they want to go into this journey of maybe it's stepping away from porn addiction, and maybe they have an addiction and they want to step away from this, or they're using objectifying sexual content in some particular way that they do not feel is in integrity with themselves. Yeah. So giving them an opportunity to step down from maybe it's like super, whatever the sexiest content I would do, and they can gradually choose to, with this numbering system, step down the ladder essentially. And I'm giving them breathing practices and ways to resensitize their bodies and selves, speaking affirmations into them, which are some of the things I've played with on there, and to some, varying success. But I just wanted to know, like, from your perspectives, is that something you feel like guys would be like, I mean, of course, a lot of guys are going to be like, straight to the sexy stuff. We're only doing the number 10s or whatever. Yeah. And that's obviously not the audience that I'm speaking to with that content. But yeah, how do you feel about, what does that bring up for you?
Yeah, I have a pretty strong reaction to this. So first of all, I think it's admirable that you want to lead men to that place, to a deeper space. That's also a huge responsibility that you're taking on your shoulders that you don't necessarily have the obligation to. I think, like, here's the thing that comes up for me is, I think that the best thing that you could do for your audience is to reveal your humanity to them. which is what you were doing, right?
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
like, and to get really clear on what I mean by that is, when most guys go to a Pornhub or an OnlyFans, it's to objectify, to get in, to get out, to have a really sexualized situation. And then 100% of the places you go, you get that. But like with you, Mercedes, where you're starting to show the rest of your life and what matters to you and the books that you're reading and, what makes you feel connected to a man when you're with him. Like those are the things that once a guy who's coming for a very specific reason, and then you're kind of slowing him down and saying, introducing these other things, he can see you as a human being. And that in and of itself can be wildly healing. And then every once in a while, here's the book to read, here's another podcast. So like you can lead him down those paths. I think you showing yourself in the human side of it, the more and more you do that, that's the way that guys are going to wake up.
I couldn't agree more with that. I mean, I see that in there's two examples of that. One is like the glorification of the illegal drug trade. It's like, it's actually really bad when you start seeing the bodies lining up and the people that are getting addicted, the cool cars and the jets and the hot girls that these drug dealers might have. It's just, yeah, it looks cool for film, but the reality is it's nasty. Okay. But the other thing too is, let's pick on these women that are the porn stars, because I'm just going to speak for that, because I feel like a lot of our audience is male. These women, there is life after that. And they become mothers, if not already, and they have to go drop their kids off at the high school, and they will get into a dating relationship, and they will they might get cancer, they might have heart problems. These are real people, and they choose to, some of them choose to be in porn, but there's also a lot of human trafficking. And once you understand that it's not just a hot girl that wants to get nailed and she loves it, it's not, she's an actor, man. And it's just like, it's not real. And I hate to say that, but it's just not. And it's like, they're humans. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with both of you on those points. I think the access I have is, I had growing up a lot of influence from close family members who were actually porn stars or porn actors, people in my life who I knew that industry and what that looks like behind the scenes, which taught me so much about, what I didn't want to necessarily do with my body or life, and what it looked like to be either objectified or feel subjectively sexy in your body. And I've been lucky enough to carry that through. Although there have been, just to be clear, there have been stints where I was definitely in an unhealthy place with that and looking for external validation. However, in going into creating an OnlyFans, I was very clear, I was very fortunate not to do it out of any sense of desperation for money or any of those things, but with this very clear intention that I'm going to be this bridge between sexuality and spirituality. And on that platform, although there are men who, of course, just come there to objectify me, and that's really their business because I create content where I feel subjectively sexy while creating it, I also have this amazing breadth of men there who are in the DMs with me every single day, talking about and venting their situations, their issues, and essentially getting advice from a female on things that they are going through in their life. It's a therapeutic process, I think, for both them and for myself, and it's where all of the questioning that it happens on this show comes from, is the back end of my OnlyFans. So they are definitely proof that there are men out there that may enter the world I live in and I offer on that platform through the eye candy, the sexy stuff, but are also willing to actually go in there and do this other work, do some work in the back end. Yeah.
And I think if you continue to share more about like what does turn you on in a man and what is, for you a healthy masculine, what feels good for you when you get DM'd, like the guys that DM you that get your attention and then you're going to engage with them versus the guys who just come in and just like, show
you're
you,
hot.
You know what I mean? Like that's,
what more can I get from you? Uh-huh.
Right. Like, I think the more that you share about that stuff, then you're broadening their experience of you and they see more and more of your humanity. And I think a lot of guys need to be slowed down when they come to these spaces because there's a certain speed and intensity that gets activated when a guy goes to a porn site. And let's just use a porn aggregator, like a Pornhub or an Xvideos as a quick example. Like say, for example, if I want to just get high, right, I'm going to smoke a joint or something like that. But then I have to go to the store to pick up this joint. And then at the store, which is the porn aggregator, the store now has not just marijuana, but like opiates and, like heroin and fentanyl and cocaine and everything. You walk in and you're like, oh my God. That's what happens when you go to a porn site. You're like, I may just want to go jerk off, but now I'm blasted with incest porn and gangbangs and you name it. And it's like, it's getting you into this. If you can slow that experience down, someone's coming because you're beautiful, they like what you got, and there's also a humanity that you brought there, then that like unconscious roller coaster that a guy goes on, you short circuit that.
Right.
I think the more you continue to do that, the more you'll be able to change a guy's experience who comes and engages with you. Yeah.
Well, then I'm going to keep on keeping on. This has been a very enlightening conversation, Dom, per usual with you. So I just want to say how much I appreciate your work again. And I know I tell you maybe all the time, every time I see you, every time I talk to you, but, and Chap will give us in just a moment all the places that our audience can find you, because I know they're going to want to after this. Cool. But you really are showing up in the world as someone who is not only doing the work, but is being this very clear channel to make the work digestible. And that is, I think, I don't think there's a more powerful place for you out there. So I'm just so glad you're in your calling, and I appreciate you. And we are very lucky to have you in our world. Oh, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and you can get into his world as well, but on Instagram, it's at Dominick Q, and then podcast is The Great Man Within. All right? You're right. Great. Come and listen. We've got plenty of episodes for you to dive into. Thank you. Wonderful. And thank you guys for being here with us. If you want to be part of our community, please subscribe, connect, comment through the links below, and please share this episode with someone who might need to hear it. We will catch you again next week. Bye for now.